What's up, guys? Today I wanted to look at something. In the Bible in terms of prophecy. Whenever you see a day, it's equal to a year. It's called the Historicism prophetic interpretation. It's been used predominantly by the Protestant Christian churches, and it used to always stand as the major method of prophecy. Nowadays, the churches have all gone away from that. Many of them, they follow what's called Preterism and Futurism, which was brought in by the papacy, by the Jesuits, the Jesuit Order. It was the anti Protestant counter Reformation is what it was. But we're going to look at a couple examples here, and we're going to look at a very significant time that's in the Bible, because the Bible's filled with time prophecies that I never knew until recently. All right, let's take a look at this. Notice at the top here, and this is from Desire of Ages, Ellen White. It says a day in prophecy stands for a year. Okay. For instance, the 70 weeks of Daniel is the 70 weeks is equal to 490 days. So in prophetic terms, that would be 490 years. Okay, this is how we can interpret the time prophecies that other people, they'll read the Bible and they won't understand because they don't know how to interpret it. You know, the Bible, we know that the Bible interprets itself. It's not open for any private interpretation. So we're going to look at a couple verses here. First one we're going to look at is Numbers 14:34. Okay. After the number of the days in which ye searched the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. So right there, God's telling us that 40 days is equal to 40 years. Okay, now we're going to look at another example of this in Ezekiel chapter 4. It's in verse 6. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year. So those 40 days are equal to 40 years. So anytime we see a prophecy talking about days, we know that it's years. For example, the Bible's talking about 1 week. Well, 1 week is equal to 7 days. So that 7 days would be equal to 7 years. So like the last 7 years of Jesus' ministry would be the last week of his ministry. Okay. Just helps us understand the Bible and the prophecies. So let's take a look at, let's go to Daniel 9:25. And we're going to talk about one of the most significant time prophecies in the Bible that God repeats more than once. Okay, check this out. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 60 is equal to 60 and 2, so that's 62 weeks plus 7 weeks, okay? So that's 69 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Okay, now if we look at verse 24, it says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Now this Daniel is telling the nation of Israel has 70 weeks left to get it right, or basically what's going to happen is the gospel is going to be taken from the Jewish nation and it's going to be given to the Gentiles. So 70 weeks, and we read that earlier, 70 weeks, it comes out, it equals 490 days, but we know which would be 490 years. Okay? And this prophecy, the starting date would have been, and it tells us when they give the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, and that took place in 457 BC. Okay, so 490 years would take us to 34 AD, and that's when Stephen was stoned, and that's when the Jewish nation lost the gospel, and Paul took it to the Gentiles. Okay, that's what that's talking about there. But let's look at a couple more verses. I want to look at Ezekiel 6:14. I think it's Ezekiel. Let me see here. Oh, you know what? It's Ezra 6:14. That was my bad. Let's look at Ezra 6:14. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Iddo. And they builded and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. This is what happened, and all the scholars agreed to. This year, it would have been 457 BC, is when this command went forth. Okay. So let's stay in Ezra, and let's look at verses 1 and verse 9 of chapter 7. Now after these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra the son of Sariah, the son of Azariah, the son of Hilkiah. Let's look at verse 9. This is just around that time period of when this was happening. For upon the first day of the first month began he to go up from Babylon, and on the first day of the 5th month came he to Jerusalem, according to the good hand of his God upon him. I believe this is when Ezra got to Jerusalem, when he left Babylon, and this was the command that he gave to restore Jerusalem. We'll have to look at that a little bit further. I don't know why I had that verse in here, but I know it has something to do with that. Alright, well, let's look at Daniel 8:14. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys one of the most significant time periods of the Bible. It's very important for us to know. Let's go to Daniel 8:14. Okay, this is a very famous one. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now the starting point on this would be 457 BC, because it's part of the 70-week prophecy. Okay, this prophecy is very significant to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because the 2,300 days, which we know by prophetic interpretation of a day for a year, this would be 2,300 years. And if you go 2,300 years from that 457 BC starting point, it takes us to the year 1844, which anybody that studies the Bible, that's a very significant year, because that's the year Jesus entered into the most holy place, in the heavenly sanctuary. And then shortly after, a prophet was raised up on the earth. Her name was Ellen White. So that's a very significant verse. But the good one I want to show you guys, so let's hop down to Daniel 12:7. Because there's a really big one here. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half a time. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. Now you guys see where it says that it shall be for a time, a times, and a half. It'd be a half a time. Well, that right there is a time prophecy. Okay, a time is equal to 1 year. Okay, it's the Greek word moed, or the Hebrew word moed, I should say. Okay, it's one time is 1 year. Okay, 7 times would be 7 years. Now notice how it says times. That would be 2 times. A time is 1, times would be 2 years, and a half a time would be a half a year. Now if you add all that up, 1 year plus 2 years plus half a year, that equals 3.5 years. Well, if you count up the number of days, 30 days, there are 30 days in a month. If you count all that up, it comes out to 1,260 days. That's one of the most significant prophecies in the Bible because it covers the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages was the papacy when it reigned supreme over the kings of the earth. It went from 538 AD and it ran all the way to 1798, exactly 1,260 years of papal supremacy on the earth. This Satan was hiding inside the Christian church and basically was in charge of the established Christian church almost the entire time Christ has been gone. This is why so many people are confused when it comes to the Christian faith, because there's so much error and there's so many lies and deceit with the Christian faith that it's, unless you study it for yourself, you're never going to figure it out. Okay, but that is very significant. That time, times, and half a time, because that's equal to 3.5 years. And we're going to take a look at some more verses that talk about this. Let's go to Revelation 11:2. I want to show you guys this. If you go to, and remember the 1260 days, because it's very, very important to know. Check this out. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be tread under foot 42 months. Okay, that 42 months that's speaking right there, if you divide that and look at the number, 42 months, if there are 30 days in a month, 42 months equals 1,260 days exactly. This is the same period of the Dark Ages that we were just talking about. And during this time, it tells us that the temple is going to be given unto the Gentiles, and they're going to be tread underfoot. During the Dark Ages, like almost 100 million Christians died during the Dark Ages of the papal supremacy. It's incredible. Let's look at this next verse. It tells us here again, and I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. That 60, that means 60. Clothed in sackcloth. This is the same period, guys. 1,260 days is what we know is 1,260 years, or 42 months, or a time times half a time. This is all the same period. Okay, and during the Dark Ages, the 2 witnesses were prophesying. You guys know what the 2 witnesses were? It was the Old and the New Testament of the Bible was prophesying that whole time. It was clothed in sackcloth. Sackcloth would represent darkness. You know how the Bibles are, a lot of Bibles have black covering? Well, there's a reason for that. During the Dark Ages, it looks like the light was going to go out, but God's Bible continued to shed light onto the world and prophesied. The sackcloth would represent the Dark Ages. Isn't that incredible? It's just so cool when you start putting this all together, man. Okay, let's look at Revelation 12:6. The next chapter, let's go to verse 6. Okay, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. It's the same time period. Now, during the Dark Ages, the woman that fled into the wilderness, we know that in Bible prophecy, a woman is a church. A woman is always a church. So God's church fled into the wilderness because during the Dark Ages, the papacy was in charge, and they killed the real God's true Christians during that time. So God's people had to survive in the mountains and in the countrysides, and they had to go into hiding until 1798. Okay, for the entire period of the Dark Ages, God's people had to hide from the face of the papacy, which was Satan himself was running the church. Isn't that incredible? It's just... He tells us about this time over and over. The Dark Ages is a very significant time in the Bible. It's also known as the Great Tribulation. That was the Dark Ages. Okay, let's look at Daniel 7:25. Daniel and Revelation are, you need each... Daniel and Revelation, they unlock each other. You can't understand Revelation fully without the book of Daniel. It's very vital to have. Let's check it out again, guys. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. It's talking about the papacy. The papacy is the little horn and the man of sin. It's the Antichrist. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He killed almost 100 million of them during the Dark Ages alone. And he will think to change times and laws. Now the times there is changing to prophetic times, which we talked about Preterism and Futurism earlier. They're different types of biblical interpretation. They're false. And also laws. He has tried to change God's law. He's tried to change the Sabbath. He's told the whole world that Sunday is God's day to worship, which we know if you believe the Bible. And Saturday is the day to worship God, not Sunday. Sunday, the papacy changed that. Okay, they also changed the 10 Commandments too. They took out the second commandment, I believe, and they split the 10th commandment into two. So, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, a times, and the dividing of time. There it is again, guys. That's explaining the 1,260 years of the Dark Ages. God just tells us in different ways. Isn't that so cool? You see, a time is 1 year, a times is 2 year, and a dividing of time, that would be equal to a half a year. So right there you got 1,260 days. When I first found that out, I was so pumped up, man. It was so cool. And I think, yeah, that was Daniel 7:25. And I think, yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Well, if we go, well, one more, go to Daniel 4:16. Okay, this is talking about Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Okay, it says, let his heart be changed from a man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This is when Nebuchadnezzar, he walked around a palace, and he let pride take over, and he thought that he had created the great Babylon. He gave God no credit. So what God did is he changed his mind, and he gave him the mind of an animal. So Nebuchadnezzar, for 7 times, which would be equal to 7 years, he lived in the fields, and he ate grass, and he lived with the animals for 7 years. And the Bible tells us about that. He did it until finally he acknowledged that God is sovereign of the universe and that he rules in the affairs of men. So when he finally acknowledged that, God gave him his brain back, his mind back, and then let him rule. But I just thought that is so cool. But that Dark Ages, you guys, that is significant because, like I said, that lasted from 538 to 1798. That was the papal supremacy of the Bible. And in 1798, it was given its deadly wound. That's when Napoleon went in, just after the French Revolution, or during the French Revolution, Napoleon went into Rome and took the Pope captive, and the Pope ended up dying in prison. But what they did, the deadly wound, is they took the state power away from the papacy. Because the only reason the papacy had power is because he had control of the armies and kingdoms of the world. But France took their army and kingdom away. So the deadly wound just means that they took his power away. But when the deadly wound is healed right here at the end of the world, what happens is the kingdoms of the world the state and civil powers of the world, the United States and England and Russia and France and Germany and all the 10 major powers of the world, the United Nations, are going to give its power to the papacy, and the papacy is going to be in control one final time. It's the resurrection of the papacy. That's what happens at the end. It's going to happen very, very soon. So, anyways, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you guys that the Dark Ages, and that in prophecy, anytime you see a day, it's equal to a year. And it's so cool how God designed that for us to see. And those that don't have the Holy Spirit, they'll never understand that, because the Holy Spirit is the one that comes to us that helps us figure those things out. So, alright, that's it for this video, guys. I will see you guys soon.